okay. That's what matters. I, I had no idea Asheville was going to get hit so hard, and I wasn't paying attention. I didn't know you were in Asheville. So, when you sent me, you said the power was going to be out, and I said, well, temporarily. No, you've been to something.
I had taken off work that day and had a feeling that it was going to be like Katrina, and it was. And then I read about the 1910 flood right before the electricity went out. So I spent the night in the bathtub, and it was a real eye-opening experience because I had already been through Katrina and knew the devastation possible. And this was not my house. I was house sitting and pet sitting. So I didn't know if it was a flood area. I didn't know if I would be okay. It was a real mind watcher.
Ricki, and this indicates what you've. I'm glad you brought up the word mind watching, because you and I are both Course in Miracles students, and how do I put this into words? You chose to take this as fill in the blanks. Another forgiveness opportunity, another opportunity to practice, another opportunity for faith.
Well, I can tell you this. I thought about evacuating. I had time, but I knew for a fact that I was right where I was supposed to be. And I had been praying, I've been praying all my life, but as a practice recently, I decided I needed more trust. And when I prayed about evacuating, I remembered how perfectly God had planted me in Asheville, and how all the steps that I had taken were guided by God himself, by Spirit, by Jesus. I prayed all along the way. And so I knew that I was right where I was supposed to be. I really wasn't happy about staying through that storm because I knew it was going to be bad. And I didn't know if I was safe. Eternally I knew I was safe, but I didn't know. And I had made a commitment to watch the house and the animal, and these friends are like family to me. And I knew that I needed to stay. I just needed to stay. And I had a car, I could have got in it. It was just a cat that could have stayed alone for days. It wasn't like I couldn't have left, but I knew I was right where I was supposed to be, so that the storm was part of my training.
I've got to ask you this question. Did you go into fear?
Absolutely. I went into fear over and over. I slept in the bathtub. I had set up a lantern and a bed in the bathtub. I've been through all the major catastrophes except for a tornado, and they were warning of that. I was on the second floor for the flood, but not for the tornado. They had a basement the whole time, but I didn't know about it. I didn't know anything about the house. I've been friends. These friends are like family to me, but this was a new house they had bought. I knew nothing about the house. And the most interesting thing that happened was I was very frightened for my life because the winds got to 75 miles an hour, and we were in a forest of trees. And really, we didn't expect hurricane winds from Florida to reach middle America. But I did read, and I did know what was going to happen. So I did hunker down in the bathtub. But right before the electricity went out, I spoke with my mother, who lived in Georgia, just 2 hours away, in more of a forest, and who has cancer and is ill. And she said to me, "I'm not feeling well." And that was it. Okay. Yeah, I took the attention off me, and I was like, oh my God, I hope my mom's okay. And then once I was able to speak to her, she only got 9-mile-an-hour winds as opposed to my 75-mile-an-hour winds.
Well, that was just it. I mean, I knew you were in North Carolina, but I don't expect hurricanes to do anything but skim along the coast.
Everyone thought like you did, but I had been given the knowledge that it would be bad, and I was to stay.
Okay, now this is perfect, Ricki, because this is gonna move straight into our interview, because we're going to talk about a lot of things, but I want to preface something that you said. The first question I asked you was, did you go into fear? And without a beat, you said yes. And as opposed to maybe a practitioner would say, oh no, I trusted God the whole time. This is kind of what you and I have been working on the last year together with the work we've been doing together, is to get honest. Yes, there's going to be fear. We're human. We're living in this time-space matrix, and we've got this wonderful path. This is the Reverend Kenneth Price show, and we're going to marry some very, uh, entry-level topics with this book called A Course in Miracles. But it's not designed to take away our fear. But what I heard from you now, and I'm glad I got it on tape, is what you did with the fear. You walk through it courageously. And I'm part of this. The reason I'm doing this show is I'm not always able to practice the Course in Miracles, like Jesus says in 365 daily lessons. A lot of times I just have to ride the Bronco. And so anyway, this is gonna move us into the interview. My name is Reverend Kenneth Price, and I'm thrilled here on Sunday, October 6th, to be interviewing Ricki Comeaux. And Ricki, she sent me a real brief bio, which I'm just going to read. This doesn't even begin to cover Ricki's, well, I'll call them credentials, for lack of a better word. Don't crucify me for using some incorrect vocabulary. But this is Ricki Comeaux. And Ricki Comeaux is a singer-songwriter who has spent the last 15 years listening and following the Spirit's guidance based on the teachings of A Course in Miracles. Her music and messages are deep and passionate. They come from an authentic personal experience of going through the darkness and into the light. Her songs and talks take you on a profound and intimate journey, igniting the desire within to break out of the ordinary and to be free. So now we're going to start the show. Good morning. How are you, Ricki?
I'm good, thank you.
Thank you for being the first guest on this. Well, I'm going to try and keep this as casual and formal as possible because you and I have, known each other. We've been working together for an entire year. But I wanted you to come on because the work that we've been doing together for the past year, I've said it 1,000 times, if we could have recorded every one of our weekly sessions, it would have. So here we are. We finally hit the record button after a year. And it's good to have you safe. Ricki, by the way, couldn't do the interview last week because, like she just said, she was caught in the hurricane. So anyway, all is well. What are you feeling, Ricki? Do you want to just jump into some of these questions that I assembled a bunch of questions that the Reverend Kenneth Price show, by the way. Well, I'll introduce myself. I'm Reverend Kenneth Price, or I'm Kenneth Price. And I was newly ordained by David Hoffmeister back in January. And I've been a Course in Miracles practitioner for many years. But before the Course in Miracles, I started my spiritual journey with the 12 steps at a very fundamental level. And over the years, I realized, I don't want to go into my story, but I had to find something advanced beyond the simple practice of the 12 steps. And ergo, the Blue Book started following me around. And I met David Hoffmeister back in 2017. Ricki, I met you probably about less than a year later in Mexico at Casa de los Milagros. And, we've, with all the different people in the Course in Miracles community, the Living Miracles community, I've just been going from one person to another, picking up nuggets. And the last 12 months, you have, let me just put it to you straight. All right, the last to the audience of this YouTube archive, it was time for Kenneth to deal with his codependency on or about November of 2023, and I got on my knees and I asked for help. I said, please help, because I'm over my head, and the Course in Miracles is not helping me through codependency. It's telling me, well, you're just in a special relationship and you have to trust Jesus. And I needed advanced help. So I got on my knees and I started praying. And Ricki, I don't know how you and I began to connect, but you began to walk me through the codependency. And that's the reason I wanted you on the first episode of this show, because I'm not the first person. I'm sure you walked through codependency. You can't walk through codependency unless you walk through it yourself. And these are some of the topics that I think would be real helpful it was helpful for me, the person who's been a Course in Miracles. Listen, I thought I guess I had gotten rather spiritually smug. Oh yeah, I've been a Course in Miracles practitioner for 15 years. I've been following David Hoffmeister for 7 years. I don't have any codependency left. It's just like it was just dormant, waiting to come out. But that's perfect, because it was dormant, waiting to come out until I was ready to alchemize it with a mighty companion. And that's the work you and I have been doing for the last year. And let's see if we can, use the next hour to share what that work has looked like, and how we can share some of that work with others. I've had a lot of people, some people, and it's not just codependency. In the Reverend Kenneth Price show, there's also going to be discussed trauma, addictions, mental illness, and the inner child. But I just felt you and I would join best if we just visited what we know best, which is what we've been doing together, is this kind of work. So anyway, how does that sound? You want to start going through questions, or do you want to just, the questions will just lead to conversations, and we can just keep it casual. Let's see what comes out of all this. How does, because I texted you earlier. You said I texted you the questions ahead of time. You said you got it all covered. All right. Here's the first question that I feel guided to ask. Okay. This one is under the category of introduction to special relationships. And can you explain, Ricki, what A Course in Miracles means by special relationships?
So before I begin answering your questions, I guess it's important to state that I just went through the hurricane in Asheville, and so I've changed. So I'm not speaking for anything but what's coming to mind in this moment. And I know we've been joining for a year. But this was true for me then. But when you go through a life-threatening experience, I think that it's kind of like your mind just kind of lights up with the truth. So in certain areas. And so for me, if you're asking me what special relationship is that what you're asking me?
That's the question. That's the word that's used in the Course in Miracles. It's called a special relationship.
Okay, great. So a special relationship is any relationship that you have to the world other than with God. So the only difference that Jesus states in the Course, the only difference between us and him, is that he has God and nothing else. A special relationship is your relationship to living in a world on an earth with a biological family, with friends, lovers, the need for jobs, attention, approval, money, bed, blankets, cars, the need to have eyeglasses or facial hair, the need to have a guitar or to sing. Special relationships are a part of being in this world. Jesus uses the special relationships. So anything the ego made, God can use for good, especially with you, Kenneth, who has a strong desire to wake up and be free.
That's what you helped me with beginning November last year, Ricki. Is this is not a problem because you did something wrong, Kenneth. This is an opportunity that has been handed to you to wake up. And it's not going to be easy, but this is called work. And Ricki, you just went all the way. This is David Hoffmeister once told me, he called me once and he says, this is a deep rabbit hole. And so I tell, I got really flippant last week. It was over Rita's, it was 2 weeks ago. We had a Course in Miracles meetup, and I kind of got flippant, and I said, you guys, please, before you start this, read the fine print, because you might want to go buy The Secret, if you want something a little bit, lighter. But if you're really ready to wake up, this is what it is. He says in the Course in Miracles that mighty companions will join you. So yeah, it got really difficult in Pittsburgh for this one man. Fine. And here's Ricki. You guys are gonna walk hand in hand through this. I kind of go off on tangents, but I love what you just said. Okay. Here's another question, Ricki, under the category. We're just gonna go down the list here. We have introduction to special relationships, codependency, and special relationships. But I just want to get to the highlights. The second question is this: How do special relationships differ from holy relationships in the context of A Course in Miracles?
Well, first, I want to just explain that a holy relationship is the relationship with spirit, and it's really the only relationship there is. Everything else is the mind projecting. Everything else is an illusion. So there's only one relationship, and it's the relationship with the spirit. So the difference between holy relationships and special relationships in this world is that for yourself, you're aware that all relationships are used for your awakening, for you coming home to God, for you knowing that you're cared for and loved and safe and eternal forever. Special relationships is quite frankly when you try to get rid of yourself and replace yourself with someone else, when you try to fill the hole within you through another person or another thing. A holy relationship is when you use everything for your expansion into the eternal now, the eternal moment of now. There really is, it's kind of like the Matrix, everything is an illusion except the one relationship with God. So if I don't, because I just went through this experience in the hurricane, I'm just going back to the one relationship with God. It was the only thing that got me through it. And, we can keep going through with the questions and I'll expand as we go.
Yeah. And feel free at any time, if we don't have to stick with the questions are just to prime the pump to start a conversation. But
the questions are good. The questions are good. Keep them coming.
There's something you said that I want to flush out. And this is really good because in the Course in Miracles is a spiritual path that uses relationships. And it's the world sees relationships different. The world sees relationships as, can I get security from this person? Can I get love from this person? And the Course, that's the worldview, and that's actually general consensus. But Jesus in A Course in Miracles says no. Well, maybe he doesn't say it as much as David Hoffmeister says it. Maybe they both say it, but they say relationships are to flush up the shadow which has been lying dormant unconscious, so that we get to look at it, so that we get to unbelieve it. And based on that premise, we can only be grateful to our brother or sister, grateful. And that's really hard to do when the shadow is coming up full steam ahead. The shadow is kind of like that hurricane you just went through. It's like, oh my God, I want to hide in the back.
Yeah, the hurricane is simply my mind.
There we go. Let's draw some metaphors between it. That hurricane, it is the mind, isn't it? But it was those 75 miles. Go ahead.
Well, I asked the spirit to be closer to the truth. I asked the spirit to show me that there is no death. So I got to experience what it would be like to go through death. And we do, lots of times, the goal for many of us is to die before we die. But I think that you keep mentioning David, and because I lived in community, in his community for 7 years, I was blessed with the daily practice of using relationships as the Course states. And David does focus on the practical application of the Course in Miracles and how relationships are the quickest path. When you are willing to commit to a relationship, you are able to see where you want something more than God. They are a quick way, and the only actual way, and you and I have discussed this, the only way to even get to that depth is to show up 100% for the ones that God has put in front of you in those relationships, and to give your entire heart, even though you know that it's probably going to be broken. because the whole point is for the heart to break open into agape love and to see that your heart actually cannot be broken, that your heart is literally in the heart of God. And these are illusions playing out what's the beliefs in the mind so that you can see them and release them so that you can heal.
And let me stamp this for the YouTube listeners or watchers. These were the exact words that you used with me in, over the last year, is that my heart was being broken open. Again, it wasn't because I was doing something wrong. It was because I was ready to surmount a very deep blockage that had been lodged in my heart for, over 50 years. And this is part of the reason, Ricki, I really want you and I to share this work we've been doing with the world. Because let me just kind of say it straight. I hope I don't have to edit this out of the video. There are a lot of Course in Miracles students who are very early on the path who would have just said, well, that's just a special relationship. Just choose God. Just choose the peace of God. I couldn't. I was deep. I was just like that hurricane. I was experiencing the hurricane of my mind, like you were experiencing the hurricane back there in Asheville. And I needed support. I needed underpinning. And you came in, and Jesus used you as a messenger to deliver just the right words at just the right time, so that I could take the next right step, which is all I was able to do, the winter of 2023-24, is just to take the next right step.
Well, Kenneth, you had a prayer. You had a prayer, and you have a calling for God. So what's happened, I feel, for you and for I, is that we had intense family life, childhood, and our childhoods were not happy. So we recreated those experiences with lovers and friends and community so that we could heal, because we had a prayer to heal. So it's going to keep showing up until we heal it. You understand? So, all the lovers represent the love you didn't have from your father. Yeah. And all the lovers I have represent the love I didn't get from my mother, or the approval I didn't get from my father. And that is the case for many, many people. But there is a point, and I believe a helpful, time for us to really feel that pain and allow and acknowledge that it happened, and then to decide, to get honest. How long have I been in a loop? And do I want to serve instead of simmer? That just came out.
No, this is perfect, Ricki. We're just getting frank here, because what I also heard you say is the pain does have to be felt. And that's part of the reason I want to do this YouTube. When I got to meet David Hoffmeister in 2017, I heard Tamara Youngblood gave me a new word for my vocabulary. It was called metaphysical ghosting. and it was funny. I laughed. Well, I wasn't laughing then, because I'd been doing that for decades. but no, it really, this is one of the things that's I'm just going to go. It takes courage to feel the pain. And that pain, it wasn't about the person I was with. It's, we're not upset for the reasons we think. That pain has been down in my heart for 50 years. It had to come out. Somebody had to lance the wound. All the pus had to come out so that I could begin to heal it. And that's what maybe, it's going to be different for each person. We all have a highly individualized curriculum. But in my story, I simply had to feel the pain. First, it's not about the person I'm with, here in Pittsburgh. Before that, I want to say it's not because my father abandoned me, although I'll get to that part next. It's because I abandoned me.
Yeah.
And I abandoned God. But you can't go straight to that. You have to slowly back your way out. Like David Hoffmeister is always telling us, slowly back the screw out. And you walked with me for months and months, and helped me. You sat with me, and you helped me guide, to back out that screw. So that's why I wanted. That's why I wanted to get this holy. You and I have a holy relationship, by the way. I wanted to get this unfilled. All right. So, with your permission, and listen. Every time we talk, Ricki, I mean, we could just talk on any one of these questions for several hours, but We got to, kind of move through this really quickly. So, and if anytime you want to stop me in something, you're feeling inspired.
So metaphysical ghosting, just a reminder to judge not another's path, and that everybody's doing the best they can. And that also there is a practice that we have a practice to say, well, it's not real. The world isn't real. And I'll give you an example. I used to get a sinus infection every other month, and those things last for 2 weeks minimum. And when I first got to community, just the thought that when I saw that there was a yellow color that I called infection, that I automatically said, oh, it's yellow, I have an infection. I was just given the idea that maybe I don't have to say that yellow means infection. That one idea went into my mind, and I never had a sinus infection again. So metaphysical ghosting is simply an attempt to see that the world is not real, and that we've judged amiss, and that we could get another perception. And perhaps we won't actually believe it the first time like I did. And many times I have had to go round and round. But we have to know that we're all doing the best we can, attempting to see that this world is not real.
Oh, good one on that one. You caught that fly ball. And I want to add, listen, if I could have done better, I would have. Actually,
you did perfectly. Each step leads us to the next. There is no right or wrong.
Perfect. Perfect. Maybe if I can throw out a few, incongruencies, and you can catch that fly ball, because that's what a relationship is all about. Because I wasn't supposed to wake up.
That's what a holy relationship is all about. We don't let our brother get away. We don't agree when it's not true. We have to say what we hear. We have to be able to trust the other one can take it. That's what a holy relationship is.
That one, yeah. Which is the opposite of people pleasing.
Absolutely.
That's a hard one for me. I grew up, see, these are patterns that are being broken right now. Patterns from I don't want to say from our childhood, but no, these are intergenerational patterns. My pattern was, don't rock the boat. If you love me, you won't say something, and it's fine. Patterns have to come up and be looked at, and I was ready in my 50s to begin to see these patterns. I've seen them my whole life, but I was ready to see them from, let's see, I guess even going further, I was ready to feel them. Feelings are the hard part. That's actually where the work is. It'd be real simple if we could just feel it and trust. I guess it was like the Zen master said, fall down 9 times, get up 10. Nothing's gone wrong those 9 times. We needed those 9 times.
Yes.
Okay. We're going to go into another category called codependency in special relationships. Right. Now, this is kind of bridging. I kind of see this show as bridging. I introduced the very beginning saying, I started off in the 12 steps, which is very fundamental back in the 80s. And the Course in Miracles is kind of like, spiritual graduate, spiritual, doctoral program. But, I'm hoping to use this show to create a bridge from the entry-level recovering community into some of these wonderful advanced metaphysics. Codependency in special relationships. How would you define codependency? And how does it relate to the concept of special relationships in the Course in Miracles?
Well, I believe with A Course in Miracles and community, there's a time and a step for everything. So, we want to give up the first place and take the second. We want to learn how to hear the voice for spirit, and it's helpful to learn from those who have gone before us. So there will always be the temptation to become codependent, and it is a step. So anything that you value in the world other than the peace of God, we can call codependency. But in the world's terms, I would say that we both know that codependency is needing someone else to make us feel good or approve of us or to give us our worth or to tell us we're okay, or, there's a broad range of codependency. But what I've really found through this process of learning that God is my Father and I'm eternal, the process for me, and what I've seen for others a lot, is that we are given these gifts and people and projects and functions by God, and we have to give our entire being to each of these things or people that Spirit puts in front of us, and we will probably become attached. And that is part of the learning. So, for myself, it has been a practice of allowing myself to go all the way into loving something and someone. And then when it ends, to watch my mind as I don't want to let it go. And then to finally let it go. And then I go all the way to the other end of, I don't need that person or that thing at all. I'm good. And I go all the way to the other end. And I have to be pulled back to the middle. I do need people. I do need things. I do need the symbols God has given me. And I do need to learn to drop them when they're complete. And that is hard. And it gets easier and easier as I rely on God as my single relationship.
And this is good. What I heard from that is that, and this takes a lot of. I came from the recovering community where, in the very beginning, there was so much shame going around. Oh, I got involved in another codependent. No, what I heard you say, Ricki, is that any relationship other than God is codependent, and that takes all of us off the hook, as if we're all. No one can be. Maybe there's going to be codependency in all relationships. If you want to, I don't even like the word codependency, but it's going to be used for this so people can put some context into this. But I like that. It just takes us off the hook. It takes the shame and the guilt away. And then that was the biggest thing that I came to you with. I said, Ricki, I'm full of shame and guilt, and that's the work we've been doing. Is I don't know. Maybe you can kind of pick up where I'm leaving off on this. I don't have the exact words, and if you can't, we've got another question. I've got another question to ask. But that was a great answer. Thank you. Basically, we've got to trust God primarily. God's got to come, but we've got to love God first in whatever relationships. And the only way we're going to get that is by having codependent relationships first, to realize those don't work.
Well, I think the most important point here, Kenneth, is not to judge it.
There you go.
As codependent or non-codependent, you're doing the whole messy life is the learning.
Good. This like this is Earth School, and that's the work we've been doing together. Also, is let it come up without judgment.
We eventually get very honest with ourselves. We eventually will drop our shame, our pride, and we will want to heal so bad that we're going to get snotty and messy, and just, we don't, as we grow and go through the messiness, we don't need it anymore. The shame falls away too.
We become mature, wise elders.
You are that in many ways already. You just have a desire to get it right for God, which is beautiful. It comes from such a beautiful place, and yet it's painful.
Like giving childbirth. I've used that analogy before. Yeah, it's painful, but new life is, anyway. Like I want to keep this at a pretty good clip. All right, so here's one. Okay, can you share some personal experiences or observations about codependency within the ACIM community? Again, very general. So
I believe that within the ACIM community, we are fascinated with all this new knowledge, and we're given certain roles. And like I said before, we have to fully take them on, but we have to wear them loosely like a shirt and let them go when it's time to let go. So the codependency is just a word. It's a word, and it's also a judgment. You don't know if anyone is actually codependent or giving their all to this function that God has given them. You cannot judge. We don't know how. So, everyone is doing the best they can. And the ACIM community is going to go through all the beautiful messiness and all the beautiful, exciting new revelations. They're not different from the people who are Baptists or Catholic. We're all just want to get home.
I like that. I like that, Ricki. It was my naivete that I'm going to leave the recovering community and join the Course in Miracles community. This is higher.
It always looks better on the other side, but it's all the same. We're all given the same opportunities to give and to judge not and to try again. Nothing ever goes wrong. It's just a learning, growing experience.
Well, this might be a chance to throw in a Course in Miracles, quote. What does Jesus say in the Course in Miracles? Because, it's not like, a Christian, quote that says you shouldn't judge. But Jesus actually, which I love that, but Jesus takes it even further and says, well, you guys aren't even capable of it, so why bother trying?
I love that. Takes us off the hook.
Yeah. It's like try not to think of an elephant. Try not to judge,
Yeah. Tough.
All right. This category is called metaphysical ghosting and spiritual bypassing. All right. What do you think causes people in the ACIM community to metaphysically ghost or spiritually bypass the pain associated with shadow work and special relationships?
Again, I think it's important for you to remember that if there's a teacher or a person that is, using A Course in Miracles and you don't feel that they are sincere and that they're ghosting, there are several things to look at. If you spot it, you got it. You want to take it back to your own mind. Everyone is doing the best they can and judge not. And, there are people that, okay, so what I want to tell you about every teacher or person trying to be a teacher that perhaps you don't feel is up to par. There is actually someone out there that they can help that's on their level, and they will be sent. When the student is ready, the teacher will appear, and we're all at different phases. So, if that teacher is not for you, then you just move to the next, or you go inside where the real guide is.
I like that. I've Course in Miracles is perfect for me. I'm an intellectual. Intellectuals are really handicapped. But Kenneth Wapnick called it rungs on a ladder. And he said, if you're on one rung, don't go searching for a teacher who's on a different rung. He said, if you need, basic fundamentals, don't go into an advanced. So I that was a good answer. Thank you. These are just answers for people who are in both communities who are trying to bridge, and may have. Okay, I'll stop short. We got to keep this moving. How can practitioners recognize when they are bypassing their emotional work?
How do you know that they are bypassing their emotional work?
You got me on that
if
one.
you want the depth, you have to bring it. So you really can't say that someone's not doing the work. It's a projection.
Well, maybe I ought to then bring this back to myself. How do I know? Since I'm a practitioner, how do I recognize?
That's beautiful, Kenneth. Right there. You got it. That's it right there. You cannot judge another.
Now, and I want this recorded. I'm not recording this as if I'm a spiritual teacher.
I know that.
I'm recording this as someone who's doing the work.
Yes, you are.
So this is why it's important for you and I.
Claim. That's your claim to fame. So you're owning it.
I'm not recording this as someone who's a well-assembled person. I'm recording this as someone who is transversing the dark night of the soul as I speak. So perfect. We're getting this on tape because, if I could admit and be transparent with the community, how difficult it is for me on many days still. I want to use this show to give people a permission slip that you to say we're fine just the way we are.
Yeah, absolutely.
So, which brings me back to the question, how can I recognize when I am bypassing my emotions?
That's beautiful.
It's when I go out there and buy a pack of cigarettes. You
How
gave me a
can you
permission
judge
slip.
that spirit won't use those cigarettes?
And that's what you said to me. I came to you once and I was judging. Oh my God, Ricki, I'm smoking. And you said, Kenneth, basically give yourself a break.
Yeah, it's important. And you really, really needed that at the time. And eventually even that drops away. You're going to be given everything you need. And I have been your biggest cheerleader to stop hammering yourself. And that's been very, very important. But now you have shifted into an extension role. And so you're ready for deeper answers. And that's what you're getting.
Okay, and I want this archive too for this interview. One of the roles that Ricki came to provide was encouragement. You use the word cheerleader. And sometimes when we're transversing dark night of the soul, shadow work, eye of the needle, whatever you want to call it, we need mighty companions to cheer us on.
So Kenneth, my heart went out to you automatically, wanting to give you love and support and tell you it was okay to be who you are. And that's how the Spirit sends that support in to really cradle you while you're going through the tears and hold you. And it's so beautiful. And then when that kind of support turns into a bit more, say, firm, it's just because you're ready, which is very exciting. It's almost like the story is ready to be dropped. Perhaps, perhaps not. But, when someone's heart is just beating to give you comfort and love, that is a beautiful way to know that you're held safe and that it's okay to just let go. And now look at you in front of a camera, extending what you have learned and being open to take it up to the next level of, wow, it's not ghosting when you're hearing me right now. You're really hearing me.
Well, and I want this documented too. Our weekly calls, didn't feel at all therapeutic. Every time you came on, Ricki, you were glowing and you were happy to see me.
Yeah, it's true.
I just needed love.
I was impelled to speak to you. Compelled. I felt you in my heart. Every time we get on the phone, it's just such a spark.
That's Jesus is not going to come down on a white horse. He's going to enter through a person, open their heart. You were truly channeling something that I needed more than anything else. It's just basic love.
It's just basic love. And really, that's all we're asked to do with our brother. I find a lot of these questions that you have, or there is some, wanting to understand practitioners of A Course in Miracles, wanting to understand others, wanting to understand where they're coming from, wanting to understand why they're doing the things they do. But you can tell me what's next from that statement.
Well, I'll tell you what's next. The first thing comes to mind is these are just excuses for you and I to join and share what comes out on a Sunday afternoon.
Mm-hmm. It's beautiful.
These aren't my words. Let's try another one. Well, for the YouTube, for my video editing software, I want to put like little, so ask this question. I want to do, go in and do, anyway, never mind what I want to do. You'll see when the video's done. All right. I think some of this we've already covered. So listen, I can just kind of go through this because, we're coming on 15 minutes. So, but we can take it longer if you've got more time. Here's a category called healing and awakening through special relationships. We've already touched a lot of this, but let's see what comes out of both of us. How does A Course in Miracles suggest we use special relationships for our awakening and healing?
We hand them over to the Spirit to be transformed.
That's just it. he says in A Course in Miracles, he channeled it through a psychologist, Helen Schuckman, and what was it he said? He says, don't, in my paradigm, it's, oh my God, it's a special relationship. I got to dump it and look for a holy relationship. It's like, oh God, Kenneth, no, you sit with it.
That's a trap. That's a trick.
That's a trap, which I want to archive too. It was a trap I had as a very young man, but I'm an older, I'm a senior now. But he says in A Course in Miracles, he will use relationships and transform them. I've seen it happen in my own life. Can you share any personal stories or insights about how your relationships have contributed to your spiritual growth?
Well, every time I have a relationship now with my mother or with a friend or anyone, I give it to the Spirit, which makes it difficult. It immediately makes it more difficult in the beginning. And then it brings in such compassion and love. And the thing with our conversation right now is, and the reason why you love to join with me every week is because I have mainly dropped most of my intellectual mind, and I'm not interested in those questions anymore because I thought them to exhaustion. And now I have come to the experience that the only thing that matters is how we love, how we listen, how we give our attention, how we judge not, how we're just available for our brother. And, when you and I are usually talking, I'm not being interviewed and I'm just loving you. Because that's what you need. That's what we all need.
Maybe it is really that simple.
I love you.
But we still have to make this into an interview.
You have an hour. I wouldn't edit any of it. In fact, if this would be perfect if it was live. It's like, the Spirit doesn't make any edits. It's all helpful.
Yeah, but I want to add, I got all these emojis. I could add like moving hearts and
Yeah. But really, in the end, the only thing that matters is how you loved. And you're going to see that. I mean, I have been facing death a lot in this life. And, nothing matters but the ones that our hearts come into our hearts. God, each person that you gave your attention to is really Jesus, is Christ himself. Each person that asks for help or has a need. Of course, there's discernment and boundaries, and I don't really want to go into that because that's a step. It's a practice when you people please to go through that. But in the end, it's just keeping your composure with Spirit and listening, and you'll be told what to say, where to go, and what to do.
Ricki, I'll tell you, I love this interview, and I'm excited already. And we're only going on. Well, anyway, because you and I are not here teaching A Course in Miracles. And how long have you? I mean, my God, you are one of the. But no, we've finally. It's kind of like time. It's put this down and trust, listen, follow.
I go back to it. It's a helpful resource, but I know that Spirit guided me out of the box I've been really, I was in a community for 7 years and I've been doing it on my own for 7, and both have been extremely valuable and necessary and expansive, and just, we're all going to be guided to what is perfect for us. And if we can just allow what's in front of us to be a gift instead of a burden, I think that is.
You're glowing. I got to throw in one ACIM quote. What is it he says? Well, I heard it from David Hoffmeister. David Hoffmeister, it's a big old belly laugh. If it doesn't last forever, it doesn't contain any value whatsoever. And then David goes, well, basically, so what you just said, the only thing that's going to last is love, period. And let's cut to the chase here.
So the Course in Miracles says that there's only two emotions, love or fear. So just remember that. If you're not in love, you're in fear.
Yeah. That's my first, I got to put a plug. My very first sponsor, Agnes Sabrito, if you're still out there, she used to tell me, she goes, you're complicating it. You're complicating it.
Yeah.
30 years ago. All right, 35 years ago. Let's move through. Here's one called Practical Steps and Tools. What practical steps can individuals take to transform their special relationships into holy relationships? Now, this may be for people who are watching this who have never, heard about A Course in Miracles, who are probably engulfed in drama in their lives. I want to prime the pump and see if we can, address this real briefly.
Well, there are 1,000 tools, and you can go on David Hoffmeister's website for that with movies and sheets and diagrams and all those things, which I do not do anymore right now, because I've found you've asked me what's the most practical tool, right? You're not going to like it.
I never have, but I've always listened.
It's just to go silent. And go within. Listen, I've just been through 7 days of darkness, literally no electricity and food and water. So there was no distraction. And it was just so necessary, because within me, I found what truly mattered. And that is love, and that is God, and that is peace. And the only way to know that for yourself is to go within in the silence. There's no other way, Kenneth. There's no other way.
This is very powerful. It's probably no accident that it's only been a few days that you left Asheville.
It has changed everything. There has been a shift, and how can I be truly helpful? How can I serve? How can I give my love? How can I be used? And really, if I'm feeling that I'm not being used enough, it really is to go within in the silence, and I will be lifted out of thinking that I need to do anything.
That is a core principle of A Course in Miracles, Ricki. That is so beautiful.
So are you. I love you.
Ricki, this is beautiful. I've got to share with the YouTube audience, because silence has been the struggle in my story. But I attended Suzanne Sullivan's, retreats, and I was like, Suzanne, how do you do this? There's a mystic. He's an Irish man, a little bit younger than me, but not much. Keith Kavanagh, who's really been helping me with this concept called silence. Because I felt silence is you're supposed to not hear anything. Well, at an advanced level, that's going to be just a nirvana state. But he's helped me use the Course in Miracles to understand that there is a crazy mad voice inside of my head talking to itself, and I'm not that crazy mad voice. So when you said different tools, I'm sharing with you one of my tools. Is it poses the question: who's the one who's noticing that crazy mad voice inside of my head who's talking to itself?
That's beautiful.
That's what my journey back home looks like. We're all of us are taking this journey home. We're all prodigal sons and daughters, and we're all going back to the Father who's ready to give us a hell of a party.
You also take long walks, and that's very helpful for you. It's very necessary. I do a lot of deep breathing, and I started to teach myself yoga. I laugh at it, but I really do whatever I can to quiet my mind. That's the goal. The goal is to quiet my mind and get back to the now. the now
Good.
moment.
Let's archive this because it's really easy for many of us, in the beginning to approach this from a fundamentalist worldview. I know I did, and actually everyone's probably going to. But I want to put this into the listeners. Jesus says something in the Course in Miracles. He said it's going to be a highly individualized curriculum. So you share with me yoga. We've talked about walking, and the question was what tools, and there's just two or three. There's hundreds, thousands. I'm here at Via de Angel, Jai Siegel's Awakening Heart Sangha, and right behind me there's a yoga studio, and Craig Martin did ecstatic dance yesterday morning. What works?
All of those things are helpful. Moving the body when you can't calm the mind, moving the body is helpful.
There you go. And you suggested that to me. I came to you a couple of weeks. We didn't do last week, but maybe 2 or 3 weeks ago. And I said, Ricki, I've got anger. And you said, good. You said, move the body. I said, that's perfect.
Scream it out. Beat a tennis racket on a bed.
Yeah.
Go into the car and roll up the windows and scream.
Oh, good. We're getting some good stuff documented. All right, moving right along. Are there any specific ACIM exercises or practices that you find particularly helpful in addressing codependency? Now, remember, we probably covered a lot of this, but let's just see where this question takes us.
Well, in my most painful moments of codependency to family or partnerships, and Jesus does say in A Course in Miracles that we will usually experience it as suffering, but it need not be. So that is one of the things that stays in my mind these days. But back in the day, the more I fought for what I thought I needed, and the more I demanded to have it my way, it was more painful. And when I finally surrendered to what was actually given for me, because if you want something and it's not given to you, then it's not meant to be. If a door closes, it's closed. And it's only our resistance to what is that is painful. So I couldn't have done it any better than I did it. And going through it allows me now to know that letting go is actually freedom. And by accepting the closed door as it is and not forcing it open, that I am free. And again, Kenneth, that is getting back to the present moment. My friend Calico will tell you with stage 4 cancer that if she gets very, very present, there is no pain. My dear friend that passed on, Frances Zhu, had once said, I asked her, you telling me you never, ever have a contraction? And she paused and prayed about it. And she said, actually, no, I don't. I do recognize different energy passing through, but I don't judge it. And it does, like everything else, pass on through. So the ones that have gone before me have been beyond valuable to me. Finally, in my surrender, I'm able to hear the most helpful tools. So the tools are going to be different for everyone at different levels in their awakening. And I think the really important thing to do is to find what works for you and to embrace it, and not judge it, and be with what's in front of you. There is no other path but where you find yourself.
Ricki, this is not on my list of questions, but that's perfect. The questions are only there to prime the pump. I want to ask you, or maybe not ask or discuss, because I'll share with you. I have on my path, I have to reach out and ask for help.
Yeah, it's important.
Yeah,
because that's how you learn that with God, ask and you shall receive. And we practice with our brothers and sisters.
And God, often uses people and speaks through them to deliver messages. Now that's what my highly individualized curriculum, looks like. So I want to plug that. And we learned that in a course. I mean, not a course in miracles. Remember, I'm doing I'm bridging two different paths, not the different paths, but the recovery 12-step with the Course in Miracles. And I remember way back in the beginning, they said they used to give us phone lists before we had devices. Remember dial phones, quarters. They give us phone lists. They said, call these numbers when you feel like, your head's about to explode. And you know how hard it was for me to call a number and my name is Kenneth, and I'm having fear. Just waiting for the other person to shame you, waiting for the other person to guilt you. But the miracle always happened when just the opposite took place. When the other person embraced me, when the other person said, thank you for this beautiful gift you're giving me. See, we have to go through this barrier of conditioning, which says, we've got to do it on our own. And good luck with that, folks. I've never been able to. And my miracles don't come. Maybe they come for some people on the yoga mat, but my miracles come when I'm at my wit's end and I take the risk of picking up. We used to call it the 100-pound telephone, and next thing you know, I've met the next right step.
One of the things we used to practice in community was to bring it to Jesus, and if the contraction didn't lift, then to join. And you could decide how long you wanted to be in misery, because it was always to join.
I love this. We're covering all the bases. Let's see what Ricki, my cell phone just died. But I think we were down to the last question. And I don't think I'm going to ask the last question because it sounded trite.
Beautiful.
It sort of sounded like I was supposed to be some talk show host, which I'm not. I'm the same as everybody else, waking up every morning and saying, where am I supposed to be? Who am I supposed to talk to? And I do have a minimal amount of planning, but how do you feel we can conclude this hour together? We've basically touched on codependency, special relationships, A Course in Miracles, and we've just kind of loosened it all up. We've loosened up these very. If anybody thinks the Course in Miracles contains rigidity, we're going opposite, and we're just sort of dissolving the need for any rigid thinking in along this path. Because this is what I love about you, Ricki. You do tarot card readings.
I don't right now because of my mother's, and she's afraid of them. Yeah. So even fighting that was something I just surrendered to, because eventually I have to drop the cards. I don't need them. They were just a gift for me to get out of a box that I thought could be harmful when they weren't. Everything can be used for the purposes of healing and good. And so I got to learn that. But I have explored so many things. The tarot cards were not my idea. The spirit gave me that because I had a judgment on them.
Again, I don't want to sound like a preacher who's going to quote the Bible, but so Holy Spirit will use everything the ego made. And by the way, the ego made this whole world.
Yeah, for real.
That's where David Hoffmeister gets his belly laugh. All right, so for people who are watching this on YouTube, how can they reach you? Tell and maybe give tell us about your music. You and I about your music. This is your chance. Share with us about Ricki Comeaux. Anything.
Well, I think everybody has to find what brings them closer to God. And for me, it has been writing poetry, which turned into writing music, which turned into learning the guitar. And I have a couple of YouTube channels. My name, Ricki Comeaux. There's a channeled message YouTube channel, and there's a music YouTube channel. And I just recorded a new album, and I'm kind of in the process of uploading it. But when the storm came, I just like I can be reached through my email. I do counseling, but I'm just open to whatever and whoever needs help. So those are the things that I do to get to feel God more closely in every moment. And
it'll all be down in the description line anyway. This is on YouTube. But I'm going to plug you now. I mean, I'll say it once and I'll say it again. I was reaching out for help back in November. I was completely underwater, and I had remembered how you and I joined Casa de los Milagros in 2018, and it was hard to ask you for help because I don't know how to ask for help. Because by the time I need to ask for help, at that time everything is all dark.
Yeah.
But that's why I want to use my testimony to help be perhaps a template, and if I can come out and tell everyone how difficult it is sometimes and what came out of it, then we can all come out of anyway. So it's all going to be down in the description line. Let's see if you
what I do want to say about that is the counseling that I do is such a gift for me, because whatever comes out of my mouth is for me first. Yeah. And it really does fill me up with so much joy and energy. And that's what the tarot card readings did. And that's what the music does for me. But I loosely hold on to these things now because, I can feel a shift happening since that hurricane, and I'm open to it, the form shifting. So I'm excited about changes now. Change used to scare me. But I feel like it's just really getting very, very present and remembering to trust and have faith that all things work together for good.
And I don't want to go down another rabbit hole because I'm trying to wrap this up, but there was a whole section on the GBLT that I did not even cover. But if you don't mind me outing you publicly, I don't think it's any secret. And I'm going to out myself publicly. One of the reasons I came to you, Ricki, was that you were a gay woman and I'm a gay man. And you had, a parable like I had a parable, and it was in your rear view mirror, and it was time to put my, victim story in my rear view mirror. I'm not saying, there's still not, lingering trauma and pain, but the story itself had to go in my rear view mirror, and you helped me by sharing with me that you had one too. And these are the steps you took to use that for your awakening, which is what I've chosen to do.
I did have an intense past, but it wasn't because of my sexuality. I just, the spirit can use it all.
Yeah. Keep it real simple. All right. Well, Ricki, we've been going on for over an hour, and I think that's about how I think people's attention spans will last for about an hour, and I'm not going to do any editing other than to add a bunch of fun stuff to this because I'm just having great fun with that video software. All right. Anyway, this has been Reverend Kenneth Price with Ricki Comeaux on Sunday, October 9th. This has been the first episode of the Reverend Kenneth Price Show. On this show, we're going to be talking about trauma, addictions, codependency, mental illness, the inner child, and then we're also going to be talking about this book, A Course in Miracles. Ricki, thank you. This has just been absolutely amazing. It's just what I wanted. We just loosened up. We just started talking, and I just can't wait to review this.
Well, I love you very much. Thank you for inviting me.
You've been just and if you want to reach me, I do outreach, I do support, I do counseling, and all of my information is going to be down there in the description line. I've got a website, the ReverendKennethPrice.com, I think is my website. It's all down there. All right, so that's the end of this recording. Here we go. I don't know how to end it. I usually just end all my Zoom calls with God bless everyone, and may the force be with us.